Tonight, how Port Augusta Council aims to be debt-free, but it might mean increasing rates. And the very lifelike dummies giving our flying doctors the know-how to save more lives.
This is Southern Cross News with Alison Drower.
Thanks for your company tonight. Tim Hatfield having to take some leave this week. Also tonight, some Port Lincoln school kids back home from a cultural exchange trip to Japan. But first, two teenagers charged over the deaths of 8 emu chicks in the Port Lincoln National Park have faced a children's court today. Our reporter Jason Kemp has been following this story. And Jace, what is the latest from the courts on this case?
Ali, two teenagers accused of playing a role in the death of 8 emu chicks faced a magistrate today at the Port Lincoln Youth Court. Both boys were arrested as part of a joint operation between the police and the national parks. The dead emu chicks were discovered in the same area as a crop of more than 30 cannabis plants. Police allege the emus were killed as a consequence of the teenagers doing burnouts in a car within the national park area. Today, one of the teenagers, alleged to have been the passenger in that vehicle, entered a guilty plea to 1 count of ill-treating an animal, as well as 1 charge of misusing a motor vehicle. The court was told the teenager entered the guilty plea with a view of facing a lighter penalty on the single charge. The other charges involving the cannabis plants were withdrawn. One of the teenagers left court today accompanied by his father.
See you in a month.
Ali, both teenagers will return to the Port Lincoln Youth Court on the 20th of June.
Jason Kemp reporting there. Port Augusta City Council is continuing to weigh up how it can reduce a debt of $4.5 million. Council met last night to discuss several options to bring its books back into the black, and it could mean a rate rise.
Discussing a plan of attack, Port Augusta City Council is deep in thought over how to tackle a $4.5 million deficit ahead of the budget release in over a month.
So Council's made that decision, no, we want to get rid of the deficit, be a surplus, and each and every year we actually want to do our asset renewal, but more importantly, we want to pay cash for it. We don't want to borrow money for it, we don't want to pay interest on it. We want to be able to do this and do it well for the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years to come.
Mayor Sam says council has been in deficit for as long as he's been in council, and it's time to face the facts and figures.
It's just been a mentality of councils in the years gone by, whereas this council has actually come in with advice also from our audit committee and said, no, we want to deliver surplus budgets, we want to give that sustainability.
Council says the deficit figure takes depreciation into account and the cost of maintaining the city. There is the potential for a rate rise of 3%, with the ambitious plan to save $500,000 a year over several years ahead.
We know that by doing just that, we'll ultimately reduce pressure on rates. We don't want to sit there and go, we just put rates up 6-7% and she'll be right. We want to do the opposite. We want to actually go with the most minimalistic rate increase, but still deliver the best outcome, which is actually asset renewal.
From discussions at the meeting, it's likely the council will go ahead with a rate increase and will look at reviewing services in an attempt to save cash. Yet nothing will be set in stone until the council undergoes a public consultation process next month. Amelia Simpson, Southern Cross News.
As Whyalla holds its breath on a new buyer for the Arium Steelworks, a group of shareholders in the company is worried that it's becoming the forgotten player in the drama. More than 700 investors have formed the Arium Shareholders United Group to fight the sale and push for the company to be relisted. One man, Canadian Rick LaBelle, holds $2 million worth of Arium shares, and he is concerned that the major banks will be getting paid ahead of investors. Well, it is a much better outlook for wineries across Clare Valley. Wine growers are recording bumper yields despite a delayed harvest this year due to the cooler weather. However, in the end, it's worked out in favour, as Keziah Sullivan reports.
All the grapes have been stripped from the vines and it's now time for the winemaking process to take place.
All of the grapes are off the vines, thank goodness, so we can relax and know that they're all tucked away in bed. Still got some ferments going on.
Winemakers are welcoming the later vintage this year, which has allowed the grapes extra time to grow.
It's been a long vintage. It started really late. Normally vintage sort of kicks off in February, but we didn't kick off till March.
It's looking like a fantastic vintage, a real cracker vintage, nice long ripening periods, fantastic amounts of rain right when we needed them. so we couldn't be happier.
Last year's major storms gave the vineyards a much-needed drenching.
So the tonnages are well up on last year. That's because we sort of had a lot of rain, late rain, sort of leading up to summer.
The Rieslings are shaping up to be a good drop this year, and there's been a little twist with the reds.
The red wines, normally we have big bold red wines, but this year probably a little bit more elegant, so it's going to be interesting to see how they turn out.
And it won't be long before wine lovers can get their hands on some of this year's produce.
The earliest you'll get with some wineries, they'll push it to June, July, depending on demand. Typically, as July, August, you'll start to see the first of them.
Keziah Sullivan, Southern Cross News.
Still to come in tonight's local news, the lifelike dummies that are giving our flying doctors the best in response training. You're watching Southern Cross News. Port Augusta residents are being urged to have a say on how they really feel about local health services. Researchers from the University of South Australia are conducting a survey to uncover the shortcomings in Port Augusta's health scene.
Rural health researchers from UniSA are diagnosing Port Augusta, and you can help by providing a few symptoms on what's wrong. The findings from an online survey will be used to advise the state and local government on how to improve healthcare services in the region.
Particularly what we're seeing in a lot of rural areas is a shift in, I guess, a downsizing of a lot of industry, and that's changing the morale and the culture and the well-being of people living in those areas. And we know that that then impacts on their physical and mental health as well.
Dr Leach says several key complaints are lack of transport to and from specialist appointments and access to allied health services such as podiatry and physio, putting regional patients at a disadvantage. The survey hopes to reach as many as 162,000 homes, questioning families on their eating habits to how many times they've seen a doctor in the past year.
We'd like to get a good proportion of those actually participating, because what we essentially want to do is actually go back to those regions and say, this is the state of health of your region.
Local GP Dr Alarm says he'd like to see more health services in Port Augusta.
It will be a good idea to probably increase a little bit of manpower in Port Augusta at this moment, particularly a couple of more doctors, I will say, and some more allied people.
The survey is expected to be completed by August and can be accessed online. Amelia Simpson, Southern Cross News.
The Broken Hill Royal Flying Doctor Service has received 2 state-of-the-art medical mannequins to train staff in life and death situations. The mannequins are incredibly lifelike and are able to mimic genuine body reflexes like bleeding and vomiting.
Meet Apollo, the newest member of the Flying Doctor in Broken Hill, but he has a few medical problems.
It's an incredible piece of equipment and allows us to train for medical simulation, for medical incidents that perhaps may only happen once or twice in a doctor's lifetime.
Apollo can simulate everything from a simple cough or cold to a life-threatening illness. However, the female medical mannequin Lucina is so lifelike, she has the ability to simulate varying stages of childbirth. Dr Corden says the pair will help medical teams develop and maintain their skills for real-life emergencies.
We can alter his physiology to reflect what would happen to a real patient. He's very sophisticated. He's got a completely human airway, so that allows us to put a tube in and take over that airway. He can bleed, he can make noises. You know, it's a really high-fidelity simulator.
Apollo's lifelike appearance and ability to talk allows medics a more dimensional experience. And Dr Corden says staff are also able to assess each other's response to a critical situation.
It allows us to test human factors which are important in a highly stressful medical incident. We want to put in hours and hours of simulation and medical training so that at the tip of the iceberg, when we're attending a scene, we can bring all of that training to bear, and this is an absolutely crucial element to that.
Patrick Roenke, Southern Cross News.
Meantime, the Rotary Club in Port Pirie has completed a unique project making bionic arms for those who have lost their limbs in landmine explosions in places like Cambodia. 38 different pieces make up the arms, which will help restore mobility for people in war-torn countries.
It's a very fidgety, hands-on task, but the volunteers at Rotary were determined to help those who don't have the luxury of two hands.
It takes two people approximately 2 hours to build one hand, so most people have been here since earlier this morning constructing their hands.
38 pieces construct the bionic hand, which will help those who have lost their limbs with everyday activities.
Once they're put together, they create a ratchet-style hand, so they're almost like a claw that push together and lock in with a spring-loaded mechanism, and then they can easily be released by just leaning them on anything, either their body or a table or anything.
The hand kits come in boxes of 10, which cost $5,000.
They're victims of landmines in their country, so there's still over 100 million landmines in the areas of where these hands will go.
Once their hands are sent to their location, the recipients are fitted and trained to use the hands.
So even though this is very rudimentary, it provides the opportunity for these people to work and earn money to pay for their families and to eat.
And it's a very personal process with communication between those who build and receive the hands.
You actually get to see where your hands go and who receives them, and you can see how it actually changes their lives.
Keziah Sullivan, Southern Cross News.
Australia's Deputy Prime Minister has passed on his thanks to the people of Broken Hill for hosting himself and other National Party VIPs last week. Barnaby Joyce says that he's been impressed with the forward thinking of the Silver City and that the region continues to prosper.
These towns, like the Broken Hills, the Kalgoorlie Boulders, they're great. They're part of the architecture of our nation. So, it's great to be back in Broken Hill again, to be part of a National Party conference here and bringing people here so that they can experience Broken Hill and want to come back here again and bring some tourist dollars in.
When we return after the break, a group of Port Lincoln students back from a cultural exchange to the land of the rising sun. You're watching Southern Cross News. A group of Port Lincoln school kids are back home after visiting Japan on a cultural exchange trip. The group visited Hiroshima and then Tokyo before living with a host family in Maroto.
A journey of a lifetime. 10 Port Lincoln students have returned home after spending 2 weeks in Maroto, Japan. And although the cities seem worlds apart, the students felt right at home.
The people in Maroto were very welcoming, and as soon as you'd mentioned that you were from Port Lincoln, straight away they'd welcome you with open arms, and they were very, very nice.
The children were hand-picked from schools across Port Lincoln and spent 12 days soaking up the Japanese culture, even picking up some foreign lingo.
Once you get used to talking to them and use some of your Japanese skills, you can really make good relationships and strong bonds with your family and friends that you meet there.
As part of the annual Friendship City Exchange, the group participated in planting rice and cooking the local cuisine. But for many, it was the national sport that caught their attention.
The sumo wrestling was really, really interesting to watch because they were high school students, so they were like our age really. But yeah, it was such a different thing to sport in Port Lincoln, so yeah, it was good to watch it.
The students were welcomed with traditional dances and in return presented their new Japanese friends with a gift from home.
We gave them boomerangs and lots of Australian gifts like that, and they just love it because it's such a thing that represents Port Lincoln.
The exchange, now in its 26th year, has seen nearly 700 students visit Japan, an opportunity organiser Chris Mantle is keen to see continue.
It's the friendship that we like to keep going, and that's what the agreement's all about, the friendship.
Jason Kemp, Southern Cross News.
Looks like it was a great trip there. Well, we had a wrap of the footy last night, but there's plenty of soccer and netball to tell you about. Patrick Reinke joins us now from Broken Hill. And Pat, there was a big win for West on the weekend.
Yeah, that's right, Ali. The reigning A-grade premiers bounced back from a 3-1 loss last week to hand Celtic their first defeat of the season. Zane Kemp and Tim Simons both goaled during the game, and a double from Johnny Bougeia sealed the game shut. In the second game, St Joe's downed Alma 3-0. Luca Napoli, John Corrett and the talented Matt Muscat were the goal scorers. And in the women's, West was on song defeating Celtic 6-3, while St Joe's got the best of Alma 5-2. In Port Lincoln, Seacole Masters and Lincoln Knights couldn't break their deadlock by the end of the 90, and both teams split the points. The other game was more one-sided, with Lincoln City thrashing Southern Coast 4-0, with Dannon Blacker finding the back of the net on 2 separate occasions. In Port Pirie, WA Raptors got the job done over Savoy, and Northern Demons held on to win against Mount Barker United. To netball now, and there were 3 big games in Port Lincoln. Waybacks were too good for Warnilla and won by 14. Imperial showed their authority as they downed St Mary's by 22. And South United just got past an ever-fighting Boston side. Heading into the Steel City, and YCW secured a 10-goal win over Rupina, and True Blue dispatched Kiwi 41-30. In Port Pirie, Solly had next to no problem defeating St Mark's, the margin just under 30 goals. In the second game, Central Risdon also had an easy run, knocking over Blue Wren by 20. And finally, in Port Augusta, Magpies outlasted Vikings to win by 5, and St Joe's outplayed Railways to win by 9. So, Ali, that does it for another week of local sport. It's certainly great to see plenty of action happening, even in the colder months.
Yes, but always keep the skins handy just in case. Thanks for that report, Pat. And still in Broken Hill, aspiring artists are being urged to come out of the garage or the spare room and enter this year's annual Lifeline Art Exhibition. The exhibition will open in June at the Geo Centre, and a recent sponsorship deal will offer prizes for the best works on display. 33% of all artwork sold will go to Lifeline Broken Hill services and programs.
We certainly encourage locals alike and visitors to come on board and enjoy a really fun event.
And for more information about the exhibition, you can contact Broken Hill Lifeline. Stay with us after the break, a check of all your local weather. Time for a look at your local weather now, and there shouldn't be too many complaints as the region basks in some very nice conditions. A lovely Tuesday for most of our centres. Calm conditions, temps around 20 degrees. There might have been a few drops of rain in Port Lincoln, but mainly fine. And Broken Hill made it to 22 today. On the satellite, a trough is generating a band of cloud across South Australia, mainly in the south, but a broad high is going to guarantee clear conditions into the weekend. On the water tomorrow, moderate westerlies at 15 to 20 knots on a 1 to 2 metre southerly swell, and sunrise will be at 7:10, sunset at 5:22. Tomorrow's forecast is going to reflect that stable mass of air that's associated with the high. 21 for Port Augusta, Whyalla, Port Lincoln and Corn, 22 for Woodner. Cleve will be our coolest centre tomorrow for 17, and a mainly fine 19 in Adelaide if life is taking you there. To the 4-day outlooks now, some very nice days ahead for Port Lincoln, Cleve and Woodner, with Saturday looking to be perfect for all the footy mums and dads on the sidelines. Whyalla will enjoy a run of sunny days too, right through to Saturday. Port Augusta also seeing slightly above average temps for this time of year, and Kadina looking good for 20 and 21 as well. And Port Pirie will also get its share of the autumn sunshine with 22 for Friday and Saturday. Clare will be a touch cooler but clear, and in Broken Hill a sunny run towards the weekend as well. Don't forget, you can stay up to date with all your local news via our Facebook page and also Twitter. And if you do have a local story that you'd like us to look into, just feel free to drop us an email. That is all from the team at Southern Cross News tonight. I will see you back here tomorrow night from 6:30. Until then, enjoy the rest of your night.